Hey y'all, how is it going? So I used to have a podcast way back in the day called Down Home Heart to Heart, and it was just really hard with 2 kids. It is a lot of work trying to do that stuff and, upload it and edit it. And so I grew so much spiritually just in that time in my life. Probably the past 3 years, I feel like, man, just my maturing in the faith is just absolutely insane. And the other day, I've had people ask me about the podcast, and the other day I was sitting in Carline and I was like, oh my gosh, like I spend majority of my life, I feel like, sitting in Carline. I was like, Carline Confessions, let's do like a Down Home Heart to Heart Carline edition. And so I kind of want to do that. I want to, just confess with you guys some of the things that have happened in my life and how God has shaped those things. And I started one day, the kids it was one of those just bad weeks. The kids were acting terrible, everything. I was so annoyed with just everything. And I finally examined my heart, and I was like, I think it's me. I might be the problem here. And I was like, I need to spend time in God's word. And so I look at the kids and I'm like, look, I don't care what you guys do. Y'all can play in the playroom, go outside, do whatever you want to do. Okay. I'm going to go in the study and I'm going to read God's word, because it's really important that mom spends time with God right now. So I go in there, and within, you can imagine how it went. Within 2 minutes, I think Grady comes in. She's like, hey, I can't get this open. Can you come open it? So I have to get up, go get the scissors, and I go do that. And then, get back down. I start reading. Well, I'll be darned. A few minutes later, it's like World War III is happening. There's screaming going on. And I'm like, man, what in the world? I just want to read my Bible. I'm trying to do a good thing for this family here. This is beneficial for everyone in this household. Let me do my business, So I go out there and I stop that fiasco, and then, I get back and my phone's going off. I'm getting text messages from clients needing appointments, or, Brett comes in and asks an innocent question, and I jump down his throat, and I'm like, I just need y'all to stop interrupting me. And then I was humbly convicted from the Lord with the passage that I'd read. So I'd started reading. We're going to be in Matthew 14 verse 13. This is where Jesus feeds the 5,000, and it's in each of the Gospels. And if you look at the chapter before, Jesus had just gotten the news that John the Baptist had been beheaded. He had just been killed by Herod, and he had just received the news. And in each account, it talks about how Jesus seeks solitude, which he did a lot in all of the Gospels. Is he went to spend time with God in solitude. And so in each of the stories of that's kind of where it starts, and it talks about how this is what happened, and then crowds of people were there waiting for him. Before, I guess kind of when Jesus's ministry started, he was going from town to town and the villages, and, people would hear him teaching and preaching, and they were like, who in the world is this guy? How is he able to speak like this and draw this attention with his parables? And, then he started performing the miracles, and so many people were just flocking to this man that called himself the Son of Man. They were trying to figure out who he was. And so every single account of this story starts out with, them just kind of seeking solitude. And, Jesus, is on the boat. For this one, it says the crowds heard where he was headed and followed on foot from many towns. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them and healed the sick. If you look at the account in Mark, it reads this way and says, many people recognized them and saw them leaving, and people from many towns ran ahead along the shore and got there ahead of them. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching many things. I was so convicted of this because I was like, oh my gosh, Jesus was interrupted. He was seeking a moment of solitude with God, and he was interrupted, and yet he met these people with such love and compassion. He looked at them as if they were sheep in need of a shepherd. And I thought, my gosh, every single time my kids interrupt me, I can tell you right now, I'm not, welcoming them with open arms, with compassion. And so it started getting my brain, kind of thinking on this. And I was like, Jesus, like the whole gospel, he was going from, village to village and town to town, this side of the lake to the other side of the lake. The guy was always on the move, and he was interrupted constantly. Like, he always had a mission. He was always on his way to the cross, but yet he traveled at a rate of like 3 miles per hour in his ministry. And I was like, my goodness. So I start literally flipping through all of the gospels, and I'm just looking at them, and I'm like, he stopped. He welcomed them with compassion. He stopped and he loved them and he welcomed them and he heard them and he healed them. And I was just like, wow, like I'm getting something really wrong here. And then like if you read further on after this, Jesus has been teaching the crowds, and the disciples come up to Jesus and they're like, hey, we're like out in the middle of nowhere. These people have got to be hungry. What are we going to do? We need to send them home so they can go get some food. And Jesus is like, no, stop. That's not necessary. What do we have? And they're like, well, what we have is, only, fish and bread. There's about 10,000 people here. What is that going to do, God? Like, what are you expecting us to do? You want us to go buy food? Like, that's going to cost too much money. We can't do that. And Jesus is like, but that's all we need. He blessed what they had, and I look at my life in those moments when I was reading this, and I was like, okay, I have so many missed opportunities that the interruptions in my life, I don't meet them with compassion. I don't welcome them as an opportunity to love my children well, to love my husband well, to meet them with compassion, because a lot of the times, if you look at the root of the problem, it's a me problem. You have a phone call from a friend after you've been working all day, they're going through something, and honestly, you see their name pop up and you're like, oh my gosh, I just don't know that I have the energy to do this. Or your mom, I'm sorry, Mom, if you're watching this, but you're just like, I don't know if I have it in me, and I just think this is an interruption I don't need right now. I'm trying to go to the grocery store and get home. Like, I can't be interrupted. Again, me. We must decrease so Jesus can increase in our life, so we become more like him. And, I looked at this, and a lot of the times, like, when I think about reading God's word, it's just like, I don't have time. Where am I going to find the time? I've got laundry to do. I've got job to, make money to support this family. I've got a bajillion things to do. But God says, like, you have everything that you need. And it just kind of reminded me that, like, stop, have compassion, love people well, look to heaven and pray. God will bless you. You will be fed. Don't worry. You will be fed. And that's really what I got from this. And then, I don't know, it's probably like a week or so later, I was listening to a podcast, and it's called Back Porch Theology. And Lisa Harper is, I guess, like the main talk person. And I love what she says. Like, she's like, she puts the cookie breadcrumbs on the bottom shelf for, the normal folk to understand theology and stuff. And so I've learned so much from her. But one of the podcasts that she, the title of it was, what is your IQ? What is your interruptibility quotient? And I was just like, dang, like, okay, God, I get what you're trying to say. Like, patience is something I lack. And I don't want to pray for it, but, God is humbling me in patience. And, one of the speakers on there talks about, like, how sometimes, God has probably put and planned that interruption in your life for that day. And it's an opportunity that you can love someone well. you can show someone the compassion of Christ through you by stopping, by having a chat with them, even if it's interrupting your day, but just being interruptible, just stopping. And it's hard for me to slow down. If you look at me, I'm always probably flying down the road. I'm walking fast. I'm always going somewhere, trying to get there as fast as possible. And so this was a very hard lesson for me to learn, and that I am learning is, just slowing down and, being interruptible and being glad for the interruptions, that God is, working through me. If I just get out of the way, but I hope that this somewhat encouraged you guys. I encourage you to go read those. I think that there's a lot of passages that we read that we grew up, especially if you grew up in church, that, you read, but yet you read them again years down the road when your spiritual, maturity is just grown and it changes. But I have a lot of things that I want to share with you guys, and I hope that I can make this like a thing maybe every now and then. I don't know. But yeah, so Down Home Heart to Heart, Carline Confession edition. Bye, y'all.